Hello, Steve White, Steve Arts 89. Well, I wanted to talk about a few things. I think, everyone has a few stories, and I just wanted to share a few personal experiences because this is basically my vlog. Yes, it's a YouTube channel and I talk about other things, but it's really just me talking about things that interest me, and I just want to talk about my life for a minute. I just sort of wanted to be known for a minute because sometimes I'm watching these people's videos and I'm kind of curious what their life was or how they became, because you sort of listen to some of their opinions and some of their experiences and you're sort of wondering, where did they grow up? What happened to them? And I just had a few stories, so I'm just going to tell them. Okay, so where do I start? Well, I grew up in a small town. Felt like a country town. Technically not, I don't think. We had horses. My sisters and my mother had 3 or 4 horses, depending on what time. And that was a big part of our life. So we sort of obviously lived in the town. Our house was like 3 houses from the end of the street, which was across the road from the school. So it was a fairly small world. You walked to the corner, went to school, came home. Sometimes went to the corner store once a week, did the groceries down the street. Didn't go much further than that. I mean, my home, we were kind of lucky where our house was on a corner and we kind of had like a double yard compared to the rest of the neighbourhood. And we had a park over the back. So all we had to do was go over the back fence and we had this big park with forts and slides and rides and swings and things. And just below that, when I was really young, there was a swamp and a creek, and that went down to what became the town sort of drain system, which is very much, and I played around there a lot, which is very much like in It. So a lot of things like that. I have some memories where you watch films and you sort of feel like that was my life. I did that. And I mean, I lived in Tasmania. The winters were very cold. The summers felt hot. I didn't know what heat was then, until I moved to the city. And we spent most of our time outside. We were old-fashioned, kids where mum would just say, go out and play, get out from under my feet for the day. And you'd go out in the morning and you'd come back at night when the streetlights basically came on. That was your cue. Oh, the streetlights are on. You knew at that point it was like, I think 6 or 7 o'clock or whatever. And you'd go home. For the most part, you'd just find something to do, or you'd play with your friends because other kids would be out on the street. And it was just that simple. We just had that simple a life. I was the youngest of 8, but there was a big gap between me and my eldest brother. And the eldest child was my eldest brother. And the one in between us passed away when he was young. So it was just kind of me and the girls. And my eldest sister started having children before my mother had finished. So I had nieces that were older than me or around the same age as me. And there were 4 of them. So even though one of us had passed and there weren't actually 8, because the other 4, it was actually 11. So there was quite a big family. And although my nieces didn't live with us all year round, they did live with us when we were young, and they did come back for the holidays. So it felt very Brady Bunch at times. And I related to some of those shows and 8 is Enough when I watched them on TV as a kid. And that feels like my life when I watch those shows, even though I wasn't around in the 60s, like, the Brady Bunch, obviously, or the 70s, like 8 is Enough, because my parents, because my family members, my brothers and sisters, grew up in those eras, I kind of felt like I shared them with them because all of their experiences and things that they learned or talked about or liked, or the shows they used to watch and talked about, or the books that they used to read that got left around the house, and the toys that they grew up, with that got left around the house, I kind of grew up with. So I kind of feel like I know the 60s and the 70s when I wasn't there. So it's kind of interesting, but to me anyway. But you sort of look back at that stuff and you sort of realise what sort of forms you. And I was fairly grateful that I did have all the hand-me-down toys, and I did have this house that had been lived in for like 20, 30 years. And, you know, there were all these little things to find. I could go under my mum's bed or under anyone's bed, basically, with those boxes of stuff and into any sort of wardrobe or whatever, and just find just all this stuff. It was like going up into an attic in like an old movie. That's kind of how I felt about the house. I mean, Dad had built 2 additional sheds and a cubby house and several bird houses. My dad loved animals, so it was kind of like a farm in some ways. We had lots of built cages for guinea pigs and rabbits and ducks and pigeons, and like I said, we had like a double yard, so half the yard was Dad's vegetable garden, the other half was, you know, where we'd play, and sort of around the sides was where all the sheds and that were. And there were a lot of trees because we'd been there for a long time, everything growing up. Other people's houses were different. Other people's houses, they had like no trees, no bushes. It was just like a plain yard, a lot of them. Some of them were a little bit older as well, and they had some, but it just felt different. I don't know, I felt special. I felt like my house and my the sort of history we had, because there are some other families who've been around for a while, but I feel like we had been there the longest. But yeah, I don't know, growing up in a small town, it's interesting. In some ways you feel totally restricted by it, and you hate it and you resent it and you want to get out. But then it does kind of protect you and keep you sort of safe, in that you sort of had a sort of sheltered growing up, which I kind of did. So, like, it's weird. I do feel fondly towards the town, although when I was growing up I hated it, and I probably bad-mouthed it quite badly. I don't want to go into the economics and the politics of the town and its reputation and so forth and all that, but just growing up as a kid, it felt very much like what I understand in America is like that Mayberry ideal, which people had from, I forgot the name of the show, Andy Griffith. Was that the character? I don't know. But, yeah, I'm getting towards 10 minutes. My neighbours are getting noisy. Maybe I should end this one here. But yeah, that's just how I grew up, and I'm glad. I look at kids now, and you feel old as soon as you say something like that. But you look at the kids now who grow up basically in their living rooms on the computer with the internet and online, and they don't really go out and have actual adventures. They don't actually, like, they don't do anything. They just, their whole world is online, and they don't live in the real world, and they don't actually go out and do stuff. My neighbours are getting really noisy. I knew this would happen if I tried to make these videos today, but these are sort of test runs, because I'm not quite sure what I want to say. And I'm just sort of looking at time frames and rough subjects, but I don't know. I know there's a few friends that I have who watch my videos, and there's a few people who have been following that comment regularly, who I'd like to think they'd like to actually know who I am. And like I said, when I was watching some other YouTubers, I sort of wanted them to do like at least one video about who they are and where they grew up and what their life was, or, you know, how they came to like the things that they like. Some of this stuff gets brought up randomly through, you know, videos and stuff, but no one really talks about themselves. They're just all about the subject, and it all feels a bit impersonal. So here's one of my videos. And I'll try and space them out so they're not as obvious. Because, I mean, in life we all have our stories, we all have our experiences that I think we learn from and we want to share, and I've got a few of them, and I just want them to be documented on some level, even if, you know, I'm not very important and no one really sees them. I just want them to exist. Yeah, I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Did I mention the town that I grew up in? It was GeorgeTown, Tasmania. And I'm going to stop there. I'll do a separate video about the town itself, and I'll leave it there.